Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Scruffy Movies podcast. I'm Zach Wallace.
And I'm John Crocker.
Today is one that I was literally just talking to Crocker about it, and I could not believe how much this episode is just going to fly by, I think, because we are talking about 90s live-action Disney movies today in honor of the new Aladdin coming out this weekend. And I went through and just looked, and I wrote down a bunch, but I mean, my God, at all of them that there were, I didn't even realize that there were this many. So I'm going to run through the list I wrote down. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which the first one came out in 1989, but the franchise really got started in the 90s. The Mighty Ducks franchise, Homeward Bound, Hocus Pocus, Cool Runnings, Blank Check, the Angels in the Outfield franchise, the Santa Claus franchise, Heavyweights, Man of the House, The Big Green, Tom and Huck, Muppet Treasure Island, James and the Giant Peach, First Kid, 101 Dalmatians, Jungle to Jungle, George of the Jungle, Air Bud, Rocket Man, Flubber, Parent Trap, I'll Be Home for Christmas, Inspector Gadget. And there was stuff that I didn't even write down. These were just the ones where I was like, oh, I watched all of these and loved these when I was a kid. So I didn't even write down all of them.
I think these are the movies that are easily forgotten. Not by us, not necessarily by our generation, but in the Disney conversation. These are the movies that everyone goes, oh yeah, that was totally Disney, and that was totally a huge part of my childhood, but I'll always remember you for, the princess movies and all that.
Yeah, I think that there's the franchises and stuff are easier to remember just because there's more of them. But the one-offs, I freaking love Heavyweights and Man of the House and The Big Green. I loved those when I was a kid. But you never hear, especially Man of the Jungle or Man of the House or Big Green, you never hear talked about, ever.
Now, I remember Man of the House and I remember Heavyweights for sure, but I don't remember Big Green. What was that about?
Big Green was Steve Guttenberg teaching kids how to play soccer in rural Texas.
I remember Ladybugs. You remember that movie?
Yes, I remember Ladybugs with Rodney Dangerfield.
Yes. Was that definitely wasn't Disney, was it?
No, I don't think so. It could have been. I don't think it was. I think there was too many sex jokes and hey, this boy's a girl jokes for it to be Disney back then.
That's the only soccer movie I remember from my childhood.
Yeah, Big Green was awesome. I loved Big Green. But I mean, just looking at it, how many movies? It's insane. As I was just looking, I was like, oh yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, got that. And then I was like, oh yeah, the freaking Mighty Ducks franchise. I just rewatched all of those movies 2 weeks ago.
And all the Air Buds. I mean, my goodness, how many Air Buds are there now?
Oh, I don't even know how many. There's 7 or 8 Air Buds, and then there's 8 Air Buddy movies, and then there's 2 spinoffs of those about Santa Paws, which is Santa Claus's dog.
Jeez, and possibly two of my favorite movies of all time ever fall on this list. One you mentioned, and I don't think you mentioned the other, and that is Cool Runnings for sure. And then The Three Musketeers.
Oh, I did not mention The Three Musketeers.
Oh, wait. Hang on. I'm looking at the list. That is not the right Three Musketeers. It's not the right one. Let me see if they did the other one.
Whenever I was going through the wiki list, I was just writing down ones that I remember really liking or that were influential to me. So, like I said, there was a lot on there that I didn't write down, but these were the ones where I was like, oh, yeah.
Well, which one should we dive into? Because there are literally just so many on this list. What are you thinking? Should we keep it sort of at a higher level, or do you want to dive into a few of these?
I want to dive into a few. I especially want to dive into the Mighty Ducks. And this kind of throws the conversation out the window we were just having of these never really get remembered in the Disney conversation because Mighty Ducks is always talked about. I would say, honestly, Mighty Ducks and The Sandlot are up there for most memorable kids sports movie, and Little Giants. But I don't know if that one is remembered as well, except for people like us. But I mean, man, the Mighty Ducks franchise, I remember getting into this franchise because I was at a Walmart. And I used to be the kid, we would go to Walmart all the time. So I would just stand in the movie section and memorize where things were. And my favorite thing to do was overhear people talking to either a Walmart associate or just their family saying like, oh, we got to find this movie, but I can't find it. And then I would go find it for them and hand it to them. And there was one old woman talking to a Walmart associate, and the guy just had no idea what she was talking about. And I had to be like 8, maybe. And I was like, ma'am, excuse me, what did you say you're looking for? And I'm sure the Walmart associate was like, this little kid, what the hell are you doing? And she was like, I'm looking for a movie called The Mighty Duck. And I was like, oh yeah, The Mighty Ducks, I got it, here it is. And I handed it to her, and she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. My nephew or grandson, whatever, wanted this so bad. And then she like went off with it, and 2 days later, I was like, man, that movie did look pretty good. Hey mom, can I go back and get The Mighty Ducks? And she was like, yeah, I don't care. And so we went back and I got The Mighty Ducks, and it like blew me away. I was like cheering at the end when Charlie scored his final point. I was cheering for a fake sports game that happened like probably 5 years ago by that point.
My goodness. I have not seen any of those movies in so long, but it was absolutely like on repeat, like it was for every kid growing up.
Yeah, and I recently rewatched them, and like they hold up well if you're able to watch them with the eyes of like, oh yeah, this is just a fun movie from my childhood. But they do so much stuff, especially in D2, where it's like you guys would be kicked out of the game. Like you can't go roping on the ice and grab somebody off the ice because you're a cowboy and he's gonna body check a girl, which is totally legal in the game you're playing.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely. God,
Also, why was
what's the
there?
word I'm looking for? They did it. They did a lot. They gave it a lot of leniency because of the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it was made for children.
Yeah, totally. Like there was probably little to no time thinking about how it should actually be or was actually done on the
Well,
rink.
I know for sure because as I was watching it, the thought never crossed me before until I just watched them recently. And I was like, hey, why was there a lasso in the dugout? Like, why was there a lasso just right next to him when he was waiting on the bench? And I had never questioned that before. I was just like, yep, he's got a lasso. Sweet. They totally use ropes all the time in hockey, enough to have one sitting right next to the bench.
Well, he was a cowboy, of course.
Yeah, but he didn't walk around with his rope all the time.
Sure he did. When we were kids, of course he did. He was a cowboy.
He took his lasso rope to an Olympic hockey game.
Never know, man.
Well, I mean, he most certainly did because that's how he lassoed the man from the evil team Iceland.
The evil team Iceland. How many Mighty Ducks were there? Because really, I only remember the Mighty Ducks, and I remember D2. And after that, it gets a little fuzzy.
D2 is the best for sure. There's only 3. And then there was an animated spinoff show, but it was about like alien ducks from the planet Puck World, where they like played hockey against this alien race. So it was like in title only had something to do with the Mighty Ducks movies.
Wow, they legitimately just took the title.
Yeah.
And like developed an animated movie around it.
Yeah, and a TV series. I don't think it lasted very long, but I remember having a couple of the toys. And then actually the Disney Corporation owns the California NHL hockey team. That is why their name is the Anaheim Ducks, because of the Mighty Ducks movie.
Yeah, they used to be the Mighty Ducks, like in real life, weren't they? Didn't they actually take the Mighty in front of it for a while?
Maybe, yeah, like at first. And I know they just recently did, which is what made me want to watch the movies in the first place. They just recently did. It was like the Mighty Ducks 20th anniversary or something like that, or like 25th, whatever it was. But they got a bunch of people to come back from the Mighty Ducks, and they had like a Mighty Ducks night. So they played a game of hockey, and then they had the cast come out and do a Q&A, and then they showed the movie for everybody, like in the Anaheim Ducks stadium.
I feel like that's one that could easily be revived. I mean, I don't know how like how big hockey is right now, because obviously we live in the South and there's not a whole lot of hockey that takes place down here. But I would imagine the culture is still is pretty much always going to be primed for a Mighty Ducks movie.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's primed right now, especially for like a Disney Plus series. Like just get a bunch of kids together and show them like playing hockey throughout their, like let them grow up and like become hockey players and stuff.
Or do like the Karate Kid and have one of the old sort of stars just come back as like the teacher, and that's all the connection we need, you know.
Easy. Joshua Jackson, who played Charlie Conway, was the main character basically of the first three, and he ain't doing nothing nowadays.
He's sitting back collecting that check every month from a movie he did 30 years ago.
I bet you that he gets like $5, if that, for the random show they have on like Freeform.
You think?
Yeah, for sure.
I bet Mighty Ducks is still raking. I mean, you literally said to start this conversation that this is like the biggest sports movie for children of our age, and I agree with that. Maybe Sandlot, maybe that's a hard choice, but I bet that there's still a lot of places around the world that gets played that you don't even think about.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like whenever they do play it, I don't think he makes that much money off of it. He was a child when they made it, so there's no way he was walking in as like a bankable Robert Downey Jr. star and being like, I won 50% back cuts of any time this is shown. He was probably just like, oh yeah, I'm in a movie. And they were like, yeah, and because we have to, every time it's shown, we'll compensate you. And so they send him like 2 cents every time it's shown or something.
Well, I hope you're wrong. It would not surprise me if you're right, but I hope you're wrong.
I have seen people on Instagram, like child stars that I follow now, like one of the kids who played Spanky in the Little Rascals movie. He'll get checks for like 6 cents for when they play the Little Rascals on TV.
Really?
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah. They just like take $1 and divide it up amongst the cast.
All right. So the Mighty Ducks, what's next?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna go with the next franchise, which is kind of a cheat because it started in 1989, but it didn't really become a franchise until the 90s, and that's the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids franchise.
Definitely another one that was on the repeat registry growing up. At least the first one, I know. I mean, that was also like great. I feel like they had great special effects for all the way back in 89. Like when they would get down in the backyard with all the ants and everything. I mean, that was like a big deal. That was crazy special effects back in those days.
Yeah, they built everything super huge and then just shot it as if it was small. But then because the rest of the movie considers it small, we're like, oh yeah, that's small. But like just really they were walking around like 6 blades of grass that were 20 feet high.
Well, a lot of it was practical, but a lot of it was special effects, right? Because they had animations and stuff.
I know they did some like claymation stuff, like with the ant would fight a scorpion, I think. The ant fought the scorpion. But yeah, I think that was like claymation and stuff. But a lot of it was just like they built an ant puppet that was just gigantic.
Yeah, they got stuck in like a scorpion trap. Like, you know, those things with the sticky stuff on the bottom of it that they crawl through?
Yeah.
I think, and gosh, I feel like that was the second movie. I can't remember, but I know they got stuck in one of those. And that was like one of those scenes that rocked me as a child. Like that shook me to see him like have to go up against a scorpion.
That might have been, I know that they fight a scorpion in the first one, but I don't know if they get stuck in anything. It's definitely not the second one because the second one is Honey, I Blew Up.
Bigger. Yeah.
And so he just makes like the toddler huge. And then the third one, they shrink themselves.
What was his name? What was the main guy's name?
Wayne Szalinski.
No way. Wayne Szalinski was the dude selling brake pads in Tommy Boy.
What? Oh, God. I'm getting my Waynes mixed up. I know Rick Moranis played him. For sure. I'm almost positive his name
Oh,
was.
you're talking about his actual name in the movie, not
Yeah.
his. Not, I'm talking about what's the actor's name.
Oh yeah, Rick Moranis.
There we go. That's more like it. Okay.
No, Wayne Zelinsky.
Okay.
That's his name. Hang on. So what's Dan Aykroyd's name in Tommy Boy? Because I was also, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, that is his name in Tommy Boy.
Yeah. I can't recall.
His name in Tommy Boy was Ray Zelinsky.
Oh, okay. Close enough.
Extremely close.
Close enough. I knew that the right neuron was firing.
It was like, that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar.
God, what? And he was in a lot. I mean, Spaceballs is what I remember right off the top of my head when I think of him, which was Spaceballs Disney? No way.
I don't think so. I'm like 90% sure it was MGM, which I think somebody owns MGM now, but I'm not sure who it is. Probably Disney.
Probably.
But yeah, he was in Spaceballs and Ghostbusters and Strange Brew and Little Giants. Like, he was all over the place.
God, dude, Strange Brew was another great one that, like, I always felt like I was watching an adult movie, like when I would watch that one growing up. And in reality, like, they just talked about Canadian bacon and ate a lot of, or drank a lot of beer.
Yeah. But because they were drinking beer, you were like, oh, this is for adults. This is an adult movie.
That's totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids definitely was great. You're blowing my mind with the claymation thing, because I'd always thought of that as being like really elementary level, like actual special effects, like digital effects. But thinking back to it and like replaying some of those scenes in my head, it's like I'm totally replaying them claymation style.
Yeah. I'm like 90% sure it was claymation. The first movie to ever like take a risk on computer animation was Jurassic Park. And that wasn't until,
It was late 80s, right?
no, it came out in 1993. So a few years after Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So everything in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids would most likely be claymation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Jurassic Park was like the watershed for digital effects, because then people saw and they were like, oh my God, the dinosaurs look real. Let's make every movie like this. And then there was a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids TV show I remember watching on Disney Channel. And like there was a ride that was at Disney World that was a lot of fun. And they had like their own like piece of the park in Epcot where everything was just like huge around you. And it was supposed to be like you were shrunk.
I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, like that one, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids blew up. People loved Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I mean, it, along with Mighty Ducks, was probably the most popular movies of like the early 90s they did. I mean, I would say that Cool Runnings was early as well, but it didn't really get popular, I don't think, until the kids that watched it when they were young got a little bit older and rewatched it.
Yeah, that's one of the movies where I feel like probably a lot of people didn't watch Cool Run. I mean, a lot of people watched Cool Runnings, but nobody really like talked about it with each other. And then when everybody grew up, somebody would make a Cool Runnings quote, and they're like, "Ha, Cool Runnings," and they're like, "Oh, you know Cool Runnings?" And then somebody hears them across the room, and they're like, "You guys talking about Cool Runnings?" And like, we just slowly found out that everybody watched it and loved it.
We are Jamaica. We have a bobsled team. Thank God. Yes, dude. I loved that movie growing up. That was one of those, and I do feel like I turned a lot of people onto that movie. Like, I think that was one of the few that I had on like that stereotypical VHS holder where the movies still have like, they have no right to be able to sit there and not fall off the way they do, like the tilted in movie holder.
Yeah.
And anytime someone would come over, they would see that and not know what it was. We would always watch it. Like, I feel like I turned a lot of my fellow elementary school and middle school friends onto Cool Runnings.
Yeah, that Cool Runnings was just one where and maybe it's just with like people didn't really have it around me, but I remember watching it a lot on like HBO when it would come on. But then like that was it. That was the extent. I would watch it on HBO and then that was it.
No, see, I didn't have HBO until way later in life.
Oh, we had HBO since I can remember.
Blank Check was kind of the same way too, though. Like Blank Check was also that one that you either like knew about or you didn't. And that was one of those movies that was it was just the life you wanted to live. Like I just hoped and prayed that somehow I got gifted a blank check and tomorrow I could have like all the toys I'd ever wanted, a slide from my bedroom to my basement swimming pool, like everything, go dancing in the fountains, like no responsibilities, like somehow no one has found out that I'm doing all of this yet and I can just go have anything I wanted. And of course, you learn your lesson in the end.
I honestly am trying to remember, and my mind is not negating it. My mind isn't like, oh no, that didn't happen. I think I might have, I didn't like run out in front of cars or anything, but I think I might have like waited in driveways for a little too long at certain points to try and get somebody to hit me so that they would give me a blank check. I was like when you said that, I started thinking about it and I was like, did I do that? And my mind didn't go, no, you didn't do that. So I can't remember it, but I might have done that.
I wouldn't put it past you.
And just like set out in driveways waiting for cars to pull up to hit me so that I could get a blank check in my like middle class suburban neighborhood. Somebody would have $1 million blank check they would give me. And as soon as they would write something on it, I would just run away.
My goodness. Yeah. I mean, that the water slide to the swimming pool from your bedroom thing, like that, if I ever become independently wealthy, that will happen at my house and that will be because of blank check.
And I remember specifically his like TV video game room where he had like 30
laid back in the chair.
Yeah, like 30 TVs stacked on top of each other that he could play video games on. But he could also, like, if he wanted to watch TV, he could watch 30 different channels at once.
Was so good.
I know, I loved Blank Check. And I still remember the bad guy's name was Juice. And that's
Tone Loc.
That's the one thing I can remember from that movie. The only character name I can remember.
Yeah, are you Juice? That was Tone Loc. That was the dude that did that sang Wild Things back in the 90s.
Serious?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Wild Things, that Wild Things. Yep, totally.
Oh, well, I didn't know that at all. And I also remember the very important life lesson, which I have taken with me, which was his limo driver told him that when he goes to all-you-can-eat buffets, put plastic bags in your pockets because it says all you can eat. It doesn't say all you can eat now.
Right.
So just stuff chicken wings in your pockets.
Oh, my goodness.
Man, that one was really good. And before we get too far down the list on other stuff, I did want to say Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is getting a reboot, and it's going to be called Shrunk, and Josh Gad is going to be playing Nick Zielinski, who is Wayne's son, and he accidentally shrinks his kids. So it's kind of taking the vacation route of being a very similar story, but it's like still within the same continuity of the first movie.
Yeah, and we should mention that our inspiration for this episode today is really because of the Aladdin movie coming soon, and all of the remakes that are coming down the pike. They have like 14 scheduled out.
There's a lot. I mean, really, like Alice in Wonderland came out, and they were like, "Oh wow, this made a bunch of money." And then Maleficent came out and just like blew everybody away. And they're like, "Oh, maybe there's something behind this." And then all of a sudden we got like Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Jungle Book, like Lion King, Aladdin, all within 5 years of each other.
Yeah, and they're coming out with another Maleficent too. I can never pronounce that word.
Yeah, a sequel to Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. There's a Mulan in the works.
Lady and the Tramp. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a Lady and the Tramp in the works. There is literally like
Cruella for 101 Dalmatians will be called Cruella. There's a Lilo and Stitch live action coming, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Little Mermaid, Sword in the Stone, Pinocchio, Prince Charming, which looks like it's going to be a Cinderella movie, Jungle Book 2 after Jungle Book 1, Tink for Tinkerbell, Peter Pan, which I'm assuming and hoping will be like basically the second in line after Tink and tell the same story. Rose Red, which is going to be Sleeping Beauty. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is coming out. I mean, they're really, really throwing everything they have at these live actions. And we haven't even mentioned Aladdin, Dumbo, Lion King, all the ones that are like currently in development.
Yeah, Christopher Robin, Beauty and the Beast, Alice Through the Looking Glass, like all of these that we've just gotten to. I mean, it's working though. I mean, they're making a lot of money, so people are clearly very interested.
Well, Dumbo's out already, correct?
Yeah, Dumbo's out.
Did it do well?
Aladdin just came out, and then Jungle Book comes out in like 2 months.
Did Dumbo do well?
The fact that I have to think about it means probably not as well as they wanted it to.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
That's kind of the trick with stuff now, though, with the live actions, because not every movie, the people that are our age who like ate the Disney movies up aren't going to want to go see, like, I remember Dumbo being very sad. I watched Dumbo once and I was like, okay, got it. It's like, it's the same to me as if they would make a live action Fox and the Hound. That movie was too sad. I don't want to go see a live action Fox and the Hound, but I remember Jungle Book being a lot of fun. I remember Aladdin being a lot of fun. I remember Lion King being a lot of fun. Those are the ones I want to see, and those are the ones that would get me to the theater.
They all had their sad points. I mean, Jungle Book definitely had its sad points for sure. And I see what you're saying about Fox and the Hound, just because that would be like the pretty fluffy puppy. Oh, anyway, I don't even want to say it. But Dumbo scared the crap out of me in animation form growing up. Like, I remember Dumbo specifically, like that weird acid trip dream that happens with the elephants marching. Like, I was really curious how they were going to redo that in live action, or if they would even do that, because I wholeheartedly believe that one scene is responsible for a generation of people that have anxiety.
And it's literally the story about like his mom gets taken away from him, and it's like, we got to get your mom back. And it's like, I don't want to see an elephant, especially a live action elephant, just be sad the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's not like they went into a room and started asking people, what would you like to see in live action? It's like they just looked at their list and they were like, what's an old one? Dumbo? Yeah, who cares? Make that one.
Yeah, maybe they're playing the large number thing with this, and they're just throwing a lot up against the wall so that inevitably some will stick.
Yeah, I mean, just really like, and I'm kind of negating myself here because Lion King is definitely my most looked forward to Disney live action movie that has ever come out. But just seeing animals be sad is sad. I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember the OG live action Jungle Book?
Oh yeah, where Mowgli like grew up. It was like a sequel to the animated Jungle Book almost. Mowgli was like an adult. Yeah, I remember it.
Totally.
That one also came out in like 1994 or something. So that one's also another live action 90s. I think that one was their first live action one ever.
Might be like live action remake of an animated.
Yeah. And then it was like that Jungle Book, then 101 Dalmatians, 102 Dalmatians, and then nothing until 2010 when Alice in Wonderland came out.
God, dude, the live action 101 Dalmatians, that was probably the most successful live action remake of our childhood, because that was like well established in the collection of movies that everyone had. It's just the one random live action one.
Yeah, I had them both. And I just told my wife the other day, I still haven't seen 102 Dalmatians.
Oh my goodness. I mean, and of course at the time as well, I remember watching Tom and Huck over and over and over and over. And that had what's his name from Tool Time in it.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. He played Tom.
Yep, absolutely.
It was about them finding Injun Joe's treasure.
And yeah, Tom suckering all the kids out of washing the fence, and oh man, they had the raft. My goodness, like that was such a good one.
That movie made me interested in like the Tom Sawyer Huckleberry Finn books, And then I remember like trying to read Tom Sawyer, and I couldn't really get into it because it was just like an older book, but this was definitely a movie made for like 90s kids. And then I started reading Huckleberry Finn, and I was like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta be careful with those. I mean, they're banned outright now.
No, not Huck. I don't think Tom is either.
You sure?
I think so.
I think they might just be banned in schools then. Oh, what does that sound mean?
That sound means it's halftime.
Woo-woo!
So halftime is the part of the show, if you haven't listened before, where Crocker and I take a break from the conversation we're having. We talk about recent movies we've seen, movie news, things we're excited about. It's also been the part of the show where we're giving away our free digital codes. We're going to continue that today by giving away one that actually surprised me a lot when I first saw it in theaters, and that's going to be Teen Titans Go to the Movies. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, I don't like Teen Titans Go. I only like the original Teen Titans. Trust me, give this one a shot. It is hilarious, especially if you're a comic book fan. So many inside jokes and stuff. I laughed harder at this movie than I have at a movie in a long time, and that is saying something. So if you want to be entered to win a free digital copy of Teen Titans Go to the Movies, just comment the code word Cyborg below or direct message me at Scruffy Movies on Instagram. Again, the code word is Cyborg, and you'll be entered to win a free digital copy of Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
Awesome. So who's kicking it off?
You go for it.
All right. Well, I don't have a whole heck of a lot. I really have not been diligent this week, jotting things down as I see new things, because typically when we sit down to do these halftimes, I just look back over what I've collected in the past 7 days or so. And really today, all I had listed was the Star Trek Picard teaser, because that was definitely what hit home the most. I am super excited. I admittedly have not kept up very well with some of the new Star Trek shows, but as some of you may know from previous conversations, that's sort of the way I roll. I let shows get a few seasons under their belt, and then I'll go binge them. I guess I just have more self-control than most, not getting started on them, only to be disappointed that you can only see like a few episodes before you have to wait a very long time for more to drop. Picard looks like it's going to be great. I know he's getting like really old in real life, so I'm curious to see kind of how they use him and what they do. Really, what the entire premise is going to be about. They reference his home in France, which we actually got to see in TNG back in a few of those episodes. I know specifically the one where they go and meet his brother. They spend a lot of time there at his family winery. So it was really kind of cool to see a little nod already in that teaser that they are keeping things legit and that it should pick up in exactly the same, sort of universe and timeline that we were left off in, which is always really nice. And then just as more kind of general news, not so much on like upcoming movies and trailers and things, is that we got a lot of info, like a huge info drop of everything going on at Galaxy's Edge. Specifically, we've gotten like prices for the lightsabers now, which we know will be $200 thereabouts. I'm thinking that if they're all $200 and the price tag I saw on one of them was the same for the pre-made sabers, like not like it's $200 for the one that you want to go make for yourself at Savvy's workshop, which is going to be super, super awesome. But there's another workshop where you can go buy like Obi-Wan's saber or, Anakin's saber or Dooku's or whoever. And they had Ahsoka Tano's on there for the same price as the rest of them. And she has 2 hilts. So calling it now, that's the most efficient set to buy if you're going to buy one that's already put together, because you get double the lightsabers for the same amount of money. And Ahsoka's lightsabers just look awesome with the curved hilt. I think Dooku is the only one that has a curved hilt other than her. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, they dropped loads of information about how reservations and tickets and all of that will be working for the first few months as the masses want to come down. We've actually got tickets on some of the hotel rides, or not hotel rides, some of the hotels. We've seen that the big ride, like the big sort of VR ride that they have, is not actually going to be opening with the park in Orlando. So a lot of new awesome stuff going on there. And I know you're actually going relatively soon. You've already got a trip planned, and that's on my list of things to plan over the next year or so.
Yeah, I think we're going around like March of 2020. And as soon as we started getting info about custom lightsabers and stuff, Crocker had already been saying, "Hey, I might give you the money to go make me a lightsaber." And then we were talking about the custom stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm probably gonna do that."
Yeah,
and
totally.
I was joking with him because we've made the joke about Crocker before that like he's interested in a lot of stuff, but when he gets like really interested in something, he like dives deep. Like he knows more about it than the people who got him interested in it in the first place. And so I was like, going into the lightsaber shop, I'm gonna look like a dude that's been there a million times, because I'll be like, I want hilt number 4. I need that in black, hard coated black. I don't want any light coated black. I need 2 of these kind of brackets. If you don't have this kind of bracket, I will take this kind of bracket, because I know I will have specific steps of exactly what to get for that lightsaber when I go in there.
Absolutely. Man, your trip's almost a year off, brother. I may get down there before you at that rate.
Yeah, it's not until next year.
You and your planning ahead.
Oh yeah, shoot. Gotta save that money.
You adult, you.
Well, not a lot on my list this week either. We got some awesome new trailers, though, that I was really excited about. We got one for Toy Story 4, and the trailer itself didn't get me very excited. I'm just excited that there's another Toy Story coming out in general. So that's definitely going to be one I'm going to have to check out. The Once Upon a Time in Hollywood trailer, we just got a new one, and that one looks really good. Super excited about that one. And I like it. Didn't really give away any plot points or anything. It just kind of let you think about it what you would. Like, it didn't really tell you anything of what the story was going to be, just kind of introduced you to some of the characters. So I'm very interested in what that one's going to end up being overall. And then, of course, we got the Terminator Dark Fate trailer. James Cameron's return to the Terminator franchise, where he actually helped come up with the story for this one. Linda Hamilton's return to the Terminator franchise. She hasn't been back since T2. Arnold Schwarzenegger's back. This one looks like it's just going to blow everything else out of the water. I cannot wait for this one.
That's the one I was forgetting. I knew there was one I was forgetting on my list.
I was surprised when you went down your list and you didn't say it.
And it looks like they're bringing back, from Terminator 2, the T-1000 that could like turn into the liquid metal.
It looks like yeah, he's been updated, because it looked like in the very opening of the trailer he made like a replicant of himself, and then you could see him do the liquid things, but it was different than what we'd seen before. It doesn't seem, and it's funny to say liquid, but the liquid didn't seem as solid as when T2 would make like his hand a blade. It was a blade. This one looked like it had some kind of like wave to it, and I don't know, it looked different. It looked like updated.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, there's been a lot that has gone on. So Terminator and Terminator 2, I definitely know the ins and outs of. After that, it gets a little wishy-washy, and I know that after the T-1000, which was the one in Terminator 2, they did a lot of other upgrades. Like there was the TX and the T-2000, I think, and all that. I know there's a lot of people out there that know more about the intricacies than I do with Skynet, but I believe that this is actually supposed to be what you just said, which is an upgraded version of the exact same technology. Like they've combined that original T-1000 with like another T that came in one of the other movies that had like the ability to throw out a replicant or something. So now they're basically making a super Terminator off of all the abilities from the ones that came before them. And I am super pumped that, what's her name? You just said it, is returning as well. That gets me really excited.
Linda Hamilton.
Yes.
As Sarah Connor, which we have not seen since T2.
I'm pumped. I'm excited.
Awesome. And then also last week I started, this is the summer movie season. So I've been trying to see as many as possible, trying to get to some. I know I said last week I was hoping to have Brightburn and Aladdin down at this point. I've not seen Aladdin yet, but I did see Brightburn yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. It was basically literally Superman, the horror movie, and they played a lot into like, what Superman can do. So they played a lot into that, like oh no, like there's a scene at one point where somebody points a gun at the kid, and you're just like, that's not going to do anything, that's not going to do anything, that's not going to, and they keep like the tension rising. And they haven't said in the story yet that he's bulletproof, but because of Superman's powers, that he most likely is. So they do a really good job of that, like of knowing that it's like it is Superman fans coming to see this and playing around with those kind of like stereotypes and stuff. But it was a pretty fun movie. It was extremely well made, and they kept the tension rising and everything. They did a really good storyline of like how he kind of fell into darkness and stuff. And they set up something at the end I won't say because I don't want to give away any spoilers or people still want to go see it. But they set up something during the end credits that I really hope happens.
Yeah, that movie is one that I can tell will probably continue in the future because of the buzz it has established after the fact. Like, I know, and now you and I are probably a bit more attuned to this because we legitimately have a movie podcast, but I can always tell if I get home and boot up YouTube just to see what's going on, and I see multiple videos that are like, ending explained, what happened here, what you need to know before you see, like positive reviews, that if it's getting that much buzz on the interwebs post-release, then it's probably really hit home with a lot of people, and it's probably going to really establish a fan base that would be willing to stick with it should they actually keep it rolling.
Oh, yeah, they definitely set something up in the middle of the credits, which is what I was saying I hope would happen. But they definitely set up potential for sequels and like spin-offs and like all kinds of stuff from this movie.
I still need to see it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I would highly suggest it.
Awesome.
But that's it for me for halftime this week.
All right. Back to 90s Disney movies.
Well, I guess the next big franchise would be Angels in the Outfield, which is another one, like another kind of seminal sports movie. And I remember watching it so much when I was a kid because it was G-rated, so I was allowed to watch it at my church after school. And also, like, every parent was fine with it because, like you said earlier in the episode, we live in the South. They were like, oh, my Lord, Angels coming and helping play baseball? Yes, Jesus, praise be. Let's let the children watch and observe. So that one was on repeat all the time. Whether you kind of wanted it or not, people were like, y'all want to watch Angels in the Outfield? And we were like, yeah, sure, why not? We like it. So.
And you had Doc Brown and Danny Glover. Like, couldn't go wrong.
Yeah, and Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, he plays like an outfielder. It was one of his first big movies. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the main, like, little kid.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey's in it.
Dang. All I ever really remember from that movie is Danny Glover. I went through like a time growing up where I just loved Danny Glover movies.
That's such a weird, like, he was in like one for kids.
No.
The rest were adult. He was in Lethal Weapon and Predator 2. What else did you watch?
Oh, Lordy, I don't know. But he had one where it was like a Cop and a Half style movie where it was like him and a kid.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Oh,
yeah, he was in The Color Purple, like back in the day.
That's not a kid's movie.
Yeah, but my mom watched it a lot, so I watched it a lot. He was in Operation Dumbo Drop. He was in Gone Fishing.
Oh, yeah, I remember Gone Fishing.
Yeah, he was in a few.
Oh, God, what was the name of that movie? I feel like I'm gonna hear the name of the like cop movie he was in and go, oh yeah.
Well, yeah, all the cop movies that I can think of. Well, he was a cop in a lot of movies, I feel like, but definitely the Lethal Weapons.
Yeah, he was definitely in one, though. As soon as you said Cop and a Half, I was like, yes, Because I remember him being in one where he has like a little kid that he has to watch or something.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Witness. Was it Witness? I don't know.
I don't think it was Witness. I think Witness was with Tommy Lee Jones.
Well, I don't want to get stuck on this, but yes, he
No,
holds a special
this
place
has
in
now become a Danny Glover podcast.
my heart.
I am legitimately though looking it up because it's gonna bother me. Until I do, I gotta find. Oh my God, he's been in 198 movies.
Yeah.
That is insane. Take me back to the 90s. All right, let's see.
God, Tony Danza was the pitcher in Angels in the Outfield.
Yeah, there was a million people in that movie,
Stoney Jackson.
and they were also with Angels in the Outfield. You also got Angels in the End Zone, which Christopher Lloyd came back for, which was them helping out with like a high school football team, which I also liked a lot. And then you got Angels in the Infield, which was not very good. Oh man, I don't see it. Oh, and we can't get stuck on it.
Yeah,
Well,
we could get stuck on
if anybody knows the Dan, oh, he totally was in Witness.
it. I know he was in it.
Well, if anybody knows the Danny Glover movie where he has to watch a kid and he is kind of like a cop, please let us know.
It wasn't Kindergarten Cop, was it? Was that?
No, that was Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay.
Dang. Oh well.
All right, moving on.
Moving on.
So, I mean, what do you think? Heavyweights, Man of the House.
Man, Heavyweights was one, like, especially because I was a chubby kid. I'm still a little on the chubbier side now, but I'm not fat. I'm just a little chubby. But man, Heavyweights was one where I was like, yeah, there's nothing. It's like one of the first body positive messages I ever remember seeing of like, it's okay to be you. You can work on it and still be you, because they talk about how Ben Stiller, Tony Perkis's method of losing weight was extremely dangerous and like nobody should do that. And they were like, hey, just lose it at your own pace if you want to lose it at all. And it was like, whoa, wow. Like it was crazy to see that, especially in the 90s. Everybody is like super body positive now. Like your body is your body. You do you. But that was like one of the first ones that I really remember that message being resonant and like, hey, it's okay to be fat. And if you are, you can lose it healthily and still remain yourself. It was like crazy to see. And that was all wrapped up in like a really funny story of just fat kids being fat.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that one. Like, and this is one that I refer to a lot when I'm like, man, they just couldn't make that nowadays, because I don't think they could. Even though it's an overall positive message that's delivered, the fact that they're shining the spotlight on fat kids at all, like this would be one of those movies that just gets reamed, absolutely reamed, just because people read the premise like 2 years before it even, a year before it even goes into production. Like this is one that people would not see. Back in the day, people would actually watch a movie and then make a judgment. Nowadays, we've got movie studios totally redoing their movie, their own art, because people are getting butthurt about things that they don't even know yet because they haven't seen the movie. And this would totally fall victim to that. Guaranteed, no way in the world could you actually shine the spotlight on fat people and get away with it.
Oh, yeah, it would definitely be one. The closest thing I can think of is the movie The Ringer, where when people saw that, they were like, oh, my God, Johnny Knoxville is pretending to be mentally retarded so that he can compete in the Special Olympics. Are you kidding me? But then that movie ends up actually being an advocate for mentally challenged people and showing, like, they're not really all that. They're not different from us. Like,
but that was Johnny Knoxville being Johnny Knoxville. So people, when they saw that, they were like, oh, that makes sense for him. He's going to go make this movie, and, I'm not going to watch it because I'm an upstanding member of society. Whereas if Disney were to try and come out with a Heavyweights again, no way. Like it wouldn't even, people would not let it slide by. Like you knew with Johnny Knoxville, it does what it says on the tin. Like we knew what we were getting,
Yeah, I can see that. And it definitely, like, in the first trailer, they'd have to, like, give away the it's okay to be chubby. Like, it's like they would have to say that immediately.
Yes, totally.
And even still then people would be like, "Oh wow, so you make a movie about people being fat but then say it's okay to be fat? How could you do that?"
I mean, that was the first time I'd ever seen a blob. Like,
Oh yeah, me too.
and who, who would know that all these years later, you and I would have blob experiences all our own?
Yeah, the blob that we were at our work retreat was the first blob I had ever seen in real life. And because I had seen heavyweights, I was so excited to get up on it that I just kept going back up. And then one time somebody fell off the blob and everybody was like, just jump off the dock. It's fine. You'll be fine. And then I heard one singular voice through the crowd because my head was like, I don't know. It looks kind of far. Maybe you shouldn't do that. You don't know how deep it is. One singular voice went, just do it. You'll be fine. And that was the voice of John Crocker.
Yes, sir.
And I jumped off and like bruised my back for like 2 weeks. I couldn't walk straight for like 2 weeks.
But you got over it, and now we got a great story.
Yeah, and there's hilarious video footage.
And that was the one, was it heavyweights? Or was it the South Park episode where they were making fun of heavyweights? I can never remember, where they were like hiding candy in a stump.
No, that's heavyweights.
Where he was like taking outside deliveries and selling them as like drugs.
Yeah, I don't know about drugs, but they have an entire montage of them going to a stump in the woods and taking out like donuts and Burger King, and it's all to the tune of I Want Candy. That is like an entire 2-minute scene in heavyweights.
I just remember him slinging them to all the other fat kids like drugs. Like he'd open up his jacket and just have like Free Musketeers and Snickers and be like, "Hey,
yeah,
I got this if you
and
need
then
it."
he's like, whenever the first kid gets there, he's like, "Hey, don't tell anybody, but I've snuck in some Oreos," or like whatever he says, and he's like, "Oh, that's very nice of you," and then he's like, "All right, debunk, load out," and they're like putting salamis in the bedposts.
Yes. The top of the bedpost would come off and have like a string.
Yeah, like salamis and
salami and the bedpost hollowed out.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, guys, look, here's my." And then that's when he like takes his jacket off, but the candy's like melted to his stomach, and they just start eating off of his stomach the chocolate. They like ravage the poor kid to eat the chocolate, the melted chocolate off of his stomach.
Oh my goodness. Well, we are getting close to time here, so I do want to rail off at least a few more. I mean, Tall Tale, I don't know about you, but Tall Tale was definitely in my collection and one that I would watch over and over again.
Tall Tale is a weird one for me because I had a bunch of VHSs that had the trailer on it, and I used to watch like every trailer that was before the movie I was watching. And Tall Tale was one, like, I could probably, if I watched that trailer now, I could recite it almost word for word because I've just seen it so many times. And so it was, like, really built up in my mind. And then there was a part of my childhood where I got, like, super into all those old folk tales like Paul Bunyan and Annie Oakley and, like, all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, yeah, Tall Tale. And I finally found it on VHS. And I was like, yeah. And I watched it. And I guess it was just so hyped up in my mind from watching the trailer a million times, but it didn't really live up to my expectations.
Huh. That sucks. It was great for me. There's another movie on this list that could very well be the first movie I ever saw where I thought to myself, I need to own that. Like, it never even dawned on me because, when you're 8-10 years old, your parents curate your movie collection for the most part. Like, you can make suggestions, but they're the ones that are buying it. The first time I ever saw Flubber, I knew I had to own it.
Oh my God, I loved Flubber. And they had an entire section at Toys R Us of Flubber toys. They had you could buy Flubber that was shaped like the little man Flubber. You could buy like tubs of Flubber. They had a Weebo robot that he has flying around him. And I remember thinking that the Weebo robot I was going to buy would be able to do everything in the movie that Weebo could do. So I still to this day don't know what that toy was capable of doing because I never got one. But I was like, oh my God, it can talk to me through movies and TV shows.
Nope.
No, not
And
at
it
all.
had the flying car, and
Yeah.
Flubber was great, man.
And I
Flubber was
remember
Flubber was like
specifically,
right time, everything
yeah.
I needed. It did it all for me when it came out.
And he had they put Flubber on their shoes in the basketball games and were able to like jump up all over the place and stuff. Man, God, Flubber was such a good movie. I
It really
love
was.
Flubber.
And then 1 month later, it was followed by Mr. Magoo.
Oh my god. With Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah, dude.
Man, there was what an incredible world we live in where an entire franchise can be based off of an old man who can't see what he's doing.
Well, that was, Mr. Magoo was huge way back in the day, like in our parents'
Yeah,
day.
he was like a cartoon, like a comic
Yeah,
book strip and stuff.
exactly. And then the Parent Trap remake, that was awesome because I'd spent lots of time watching the original Parent Trap. So when they came out with the remake, that was fantastic.
I mean, talk about special effects in that one. I honestly thought that Lindsay Lohan was two people until she started appearing in more stuff.
Yeah, totally. That very well could have been Lindsay Lohan's breakout role.
Yeah, I know. The only other movie I can think of that has kind of the young Lindsay Lohan in it is Life Size around that same time.
I honestly can't even recall what Life Size is.
She has an action figure that she tries to. It's another movie that couldn't be made nowadays because she goes into an occult bookstore and buys a book on how to resurrect a dead person, and she accidentally resurrects or she brings to life her toy doll instead of her dead mother, which she was trying to do. And Tyra Banks plays the doll, and she like changes everybody's lives because she's seeing it through the eyes of someone who's like, I can accomplish anything because that's what the toys are made to believe.
Yeah, it just ringing a bell, but still not doing it for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good movie. I just watched it again because they just came out with a Life Size 2 this past Christmas that was freeform original.
You remember Mighty Joe Young, bro?
I remember Mighty Joe Young. Mighty Joe Young was a good one. I remember being scared because I was scared that it was a giant gorilla and it was going to be like a King Kong type movie. And then my friend was like, "No, dude, just watch it. Trust me." And I watched it and was like, "Oh, this is good."
Totally. I remember that one being one that my parents really dug. Like that was one of the first ones where they were absolutely okay with watching it with me.
Yeah, there's a lot of these now that like I'm excited to show my future children, but there's also just a lot of these, and Disney's been really good. Disney's only gotten better about doing this. Disney is the only like kids movie studio that I know that also makes movies for adults. Like they put all kinds of stuff in there where adults can be like, haha, and like the kids have no idea what's going on.
Yep. And Pixar sort of picked up the helm with that,
Yeah.
I believe. So Mighty Joe Young had a $90 million budget and box office was 50 million.
Mm, dang, that may be why we never got to see a Mighty Joe younger.
But that goes back to another whole conversation we could have about how just little we cared about those things when we were watching these movies.
Oh yeah, I remember distinctly like discovering that a lot of the movies I thought everybody loved because I loved them when I was a kid. I was like, "Oh yeah, American Pie's got to be have like amazing reviews." And I looked it up and it was like, "Yeah, it got like a 50% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes or something." And I was like, what? What?"
Well, that's because American Pie was like the first teen movie to hit. That people weren't ready. People were not ready for American Pie when
Yeah,
American
but
Pie first came out.
that's just one of the things. Like I like would never care about the reviews. Like I could care less if this movie was like the worst. I watched The Adventures of Pluto Nash and loved it, and that's considered one of the worst movies of all time. I
The
rented
Eddie
that movie,
Murphy.
yeah, I rented that movie at least 4 or 5 times from my video store, and I'm sure the guys that rented it to me every time were like, "Why is this kid doing this? Why is this kid doing this to himself?"
Must really hate his siblings or something.
Yeah, why do his parents hate him this much? Why do they keep letting him watch The Adventures of Pluto Nash?
And then one last one you'd mentioned at the onset of this episode was Inspector Gadget, which,
Mhm.
I mean, come on. We all grew up watching the cartoon. So when they made the live action, it was just awesome.
Oh yeah, that was one. I don't know if you remember, but I remember it. You could go to McDonald's when Inspector Gadget was coming out and get a different part of Inspector Gadget where you could put them together and build like an entire Inspector Gadget, but each toy functioned on its own. Like one arm, like you would just get his arm, but it could like shoot the fist out or something, like each one functioned as a toy on its own, but then you could put them together and actually make Inspector Gadget.
No, I don't recall that.
I remember that I never completed my Inspector Gadget, and then probably like 3 years ago, my mom called me and was like, Zach, I'm at a thrift store and they have the full Inspector Gadget. And that was all she needed. I knew exactly what she meant. And I was like, well, then get it. Like,
Oh, my goodness. I was about to say, like, my next comment was going to be, I bet you could get on like eBay and find some collector that has
yeah.
the full set.
Yeah. She like all she said was they have the full Inspector Gadget, because my mom is also huge into collecting. She collects dolls, but just like toys kind of in general. So if I ever showed an interest in like a series of toys, she'd be like, I have to help him find these. And that Inspector Gadget was like, she was collecting it as much as I was. So she was also bummed when we went to McDonald's and we were like, do you have any right legs for Inspector Gadget? And they were like, oh, we have puppy dog pals now. And we were like, no. But yeah, I mean, Disney in the 90s was a force to be reckoned with, and they've only gotten stronger.
Yep. George of the Jungle is the only one that I have to mention that we haven't mentioned.
Oh yeah, George of the Jungle still holds up. Like that has so many meta jokes and stuff in it. Like the narrator talks to people in the story. Like people die in the story. And the narrator's like, oh, but this is a Disney movie, so we can't kill people. They're just very badly hurt. And it shows them like the next scene, they just fell 100 feet off of a cliff down like a rocky ravine, and they just have like a bandage on their head.
Yep. Sounds about right.
And they, George of the Jungle 2, Brendan Fraser didn't return, and like immediately they make fun of that. They're like, oh, old George is big movie star now. He couldn't return to this. And he's like, well, I'm not doing this with the new George or something. Like it's such a funny movie that was ahead of its time, because like now it's all about meta jokes and stuff. Like how many inside jokes can you make for the fans? And that is like literally all George of the Jungle was doing.
Yeah, totally. Watch out for that tree.
Oh, I sung that. I don't even know how many times I sung that when I was a kid.
I'm singing it in my head right now. It's all I can do not to sing it out loud.
But yeah, I mean, when I started to write down all these movies, this list, when I started to put this list together, I was like, whoa, like it blew me away how much I just didn't remember was Disney from the 90s.
What movie were you and I talking about recently with Tim the Toolman Taylor, where he would shoot the fly through the blow dart with the blow dart and the kid?
Yeah. Jungle to Jungle.
Jungle to Jungle. That must have been like 80s.
No, that was on here. I listed it at the start.
Okay.
I said Jungle to Jungle, but then I also said George of the Jungle. And so you were probably like, oh, yeah, George of the Jungle.
Oh, yeah, Jungle to Jungle was totally 90s, 97. Yeah, you're right. That was a great one, too. That's another underrated one.
So many. I feel like they don't make a lot of live-action Disney anymore.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Not like this.
They make a lot of, like, remakes and stuff, but you don't see a lot of, like, fresh live-action coming out from Disney.
Just not what it used to be, Zach. Not in our day.
No. Well, maybe this podcast will change that. Maybe somebody at Disney will listen to this and be like, hey, they really liked it. Let's do it again.
Yeah, that's exactly what will happen. And we'll get credited as inspiration.
We'll be producers on all of the new movies that come out.
We'll be assistant executive producers.
Assistant to the executive producers.
Yeah, exactly.
Assistant to the executive producers.
AKA we get coffee for people.
Yeah. AKA we had to pay them $2 because this idea was theirs, but we wanted it. Well, that about wraps us up. There's a lot on here we didn't even get to talk about that much, but I'm sure they will come up in later episodes, like Hocus Pocus. I'm sure will come up in a later episode because that is also a Halloween staple. But we thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully it helped you relive some nostalgia, gave you some ideas for movies that you wanted to check out again. Remember to watch it with rose-colored glasses, because there's definitely some stuff that does not hold up the way that you remember it. But remember, it was fun when you were a kid, so try and just have fun again watching it. Thank you for listening to this episode. Again, if you want to win a free digital copy of Teen Titans Go to the Movies, just enter the code word Cyborg below, or direct message me at Scruffy Movies on Instagram. Please follow us on Instagram at Scruffy Movies.
And Crockalicious.
And we thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye!